Hello and welcome to this edition of Daily Actives brought to you by Bootleg Macro. I am Dustin. We're going to be doing a weekend edition, so we're going to be covering the stocks that were the most active on Friday. We're also going to be thinking about what that means for the next week. Let's go ahead and look at BigBear.AI. Now, this has been a stock that I have definitely covered on a bunch of my previous videos. If you have looked at any of my videos, especially the ones that have been about 2 days ago, 5 days ago, 10 days ago, Big Bear AI continues to get covered. Now, one of the things that I love about what I saw on Friday was that we were up 3.98% on 291 million shares traded. When we're looking at the type of stocks that we're seeing on the most active, it's generally with the highest volume for the day. Most of them are going to be up. But as you can see here, there's only one, two, three, four stocks that are actually above 200 million shares traded. So those are going to be the most interesting for me to look at going into the next week. Looking at Big Bear AI, if you watch my video from last week, I was definitely talking about how essentially what I'd like to see is when the price, which is the black line here, hits the top of the range, which is the red line, and then comes back down in the middle of the range and then starts to correct back up towards the top. And when I use the term correct, obviously that does mean coming down towards the bottom of the range here in terms of coming back to the middle of its range. But what I'd like to see is that now we have the opportunity to go back all the way up to that 907 or 906. So if you're thinking about that, that is at least, that is over 20% from where we are right now that we could at least see at the top of the range. We start to look at what we're seeing in terms of the actual candlesticks. It is a very interesting move in Big Bear. The reason why is because you get these breakouts, you get essentially consolidation, you get a little bit of bullishness, which starts to show itself a breakout, consolidation, breakout. I wouldn't be surprised if we got consolidation here, but the way that the market is moving, especially what we saw on Friday, and considering that we saw all this volume, that 290 plus million shares traded, this makes me believe that not only was there just a turnover, but we're seeing momentum that wants to go higher. Now, when we look at the actual sentiment indicators here, I have the daily and I have the 15-day. We're looking at it. We are a little bit under the 50% line. The black line is essentially where you're going to see the market is going to settle a lot. Because if you think about this, there's always 100% of a move in a day. It could be from $1 to $2, dollar to $5, whatever it could be. It doesn't matter the amount of actual movement. What matters is the type of price movement. So right now, it looks like we're seeing 48% bullishness inside of Big Bear AI. I would expect that to be a little bit higher, just because of the move we're seeing and what I'm expecting to happen. But we are at 50% on the 3 week, 15-day, which is nice. And the reason why I think that's nice is because if we're going to get a move where we're going to start to see it come off of this bottom here, which is essentially 640, which mimics essentially where we're down here at 633 previously, we're going to need to see sentiment bounce off of this 50% line. And it's good that it's not too high, because this indicator generally can't go above 70% and generally can't go below 40%. So if we're looking at where we are today, this is actually a very bullish sign in terms of Big Bear AI. What I like as well is that we're seeing that the trend is falling. We see a very negative correlation. I always love that when I see that volatility is falling and correlation to price is going negative. The reason why I like that is because it gives me an indication that we're going to see the price go sideways to up, because two negatives will make a positive there. We go ahead and look at the data table here. As I would suspect, we see that the price is in the middle of the range. So if you're looking, you can look at the close price and volume color guide. This is essentially going to be where it is going to be in its own range. So when it has a green background with black lettering, it's in the normal range. You can see here on the 22nd when it was with light blue, that was moderately low. We can see back in the day, 2 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, when you see moderate or significantly high and moderately high. So what we're seeing now is the concerning thing would be that the price of 705 is below 739. I would need to see the price close above 739 to be truly convinced, but we have maintained bullish sentiment even with the move that we've come back down, even considering that we've gone down 2% over the past 3 weeks. Now we are seeing a flip again back to 1 month positive momentum in terms of going from negative for the previous 3 days to positive, which gives me a bull signal. So I do like that look, thinking about this for like a 3 to 6 week long trade. Let's go ahead and look at what we have next. Let's go ahead and look at Ford. Ford is going to be a very interesting one. So looking at Ford, very interesting day. Okay, so this thing was up 12.16% with 290 million shares traded. That's crazy to me. I don't know if there's government intervention. If you've watched my videos, I do not read the news. I do not pay attention to the fundamentals. I do not analyze their balance sheets. I look purely at it from a data perspective and the way that the data is actually moving. If you've ever taken any data mining classes or any data science classes, this is essentially thinking about it from a Bayesian calculation. So every single data point that comes in affects the model and the way that it is reflecting for what is the most likely future prediction. If you don't want to go that deep, just use this tool. So if we're looking at it, what we can see up close, if we just go to the 6 month, we can see that the price is well above. It closed at 1384. The top of the range is at 1347. So we are well above the top of the range. I do like to see that. I would suspect that we're going to get some pullback. We're essentially very similar to what we saw here at the beginning of October, where the price breaks up above the top of the range. Here on the third, you can see it was at 1267, where the top of the range is at 1255. It should consolidate back into the middle of the range and then continue to move higher. I would be looking to buy into the consolidation, the little bit of a pullback. The only thing that I would say that would make me not want to do that and think that maybe there's going to be a complete transformation in the move of this stock is the volume that we've seen. The volume that we've seen over the past, it looks like week here, and I was not paying attention to Ford at all. The volume that we've seen over the past 4 days was quite remarkable, and the candle that we got, I know I see it as up 8.72%. The difference between that and the way that Yahoo Finance does it, Yahoo Finance calculates their change from yesterday's close to today's close. I calculate the change on this calendar, on this bar chart, specifically from today's open to today's close. I like it that way because sometimes if you get a gap up and then it falls for the day, mine will actually say that it's negative, where Yahoo Finance will say it's positive for the day, even though it was essentially a selling day, even though you got a pop. Now, if we're looking at the volume, again, continues to show incredibly strong movement in terms of that price action. It's interesting, though, when we look at the daily sentiment, we're only at 53%. Even at the highest high recently, we only got to 56%, even with that massive volume. I do like that, but I do think it's indicative of a stock that probably has a really high float, as well as probably has a lot of institutional shareholders, so there's not actually that much turnover. So up 12.61 or 12.16 per, up 12.16% today is actually quite remarkable when you think about the fact that this generally doesn't have that kind of volatility. If we look on the 15-day, we are above the we're above the 50% line. We're at 51.2. Looking at the custom volatility here, we do see that while we're not seeing incredibly high volatility, it is rising a little bit again, as you'd expect. The correlation is positive on the volatility breaking a little bit. That's how you get a gap up. We're looking at traditional volatility. This is a crazy move, right? This is 53% volatility. When this thing is generally probably in the low 20s. Right, we're at 53%. This thing is probably in the low 20s. Like even here, when you got this volatility in July at 30%, that's an incredibly high volatility number. But if we look at the data table, um, it's wonderful to me from a price move perspective, and I don't own anything in Ford, but we are extremely high. So I love when you see extremely high with at least moderately high volume. I would love to see it on extreme or significantly high. It's great that we're bullish. We are a pretty decent ways away from where we are at the trade level, but you do see that we have a higher high in the top of the range at 1347. That's jumped significantly from 1296 the day before. If we're looking, the volatility as we continue to see is rising. We're positive on the 1 day all the way to the 1 year. I mean, you're up 16% in 5 days. You're up nearly 10% in 15 days, and up 15% over 1 month. It is kind of crazy to think that Ford is up 25% in 3 months. That's kind of bonkers to me. I imagine this is probably catalyst driven in terms of maybe tariffs, maybe a tweet, maybe a Truth Social. I don't know. Maybe they paid a bribe. I'm not sure. But Ford is a very interesting one. I'd be paying attention to see if it's just to pull back. Let's go ahead and look at Intel. Now, we have been discussing essentially from the Ford perspective how the market can transition on a stock. Intel is one where there is there is nothing that I can say that is going to give me enough conviction to believe that I shouldn't buy this. I don't care what this chart looks like as it loads. The reason why is because if you have a government that wants to support a company and is going to make sure that they do well because it's going to be positive for the personalities involved, the reputation, the financials, the shareholders, the government, the American people, I'm just going to buy it. So when I look at Intel, Intel is actually in a spot where like I feel guilty for having not bought it yesterday, just because I know that even though right now we see it at $38, and yes, only 6 weeks ago or 12 weeks ago, not even, it was at $24. I know that this what's happening. I can tell. So my favorite thing, and I'll call this out in terms of just looking at this line chart, is what I want to see is I want to see a tighter volatility. So I want to see very tight volatility, a very small break in bullishness. That's where the green bars are here is bullishness. Then I want to see an expansion. So what we're seeing is when we got through this little gully here, it looks like in August when we saw some volatility, not very much, right? We never really broke below 18. We see the bullishness return. We see the compression of the range here in November 11th or September 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 17th, and then on the 18th we saw a massive move higher above the range. The top of the range breaks out. The price falls back, just like I was talking about specifically in Big Bear, and then you see it hit the range again. Now it's consolidating, and we're getting a nice tight range again. So I like this move. This is actually something I'll be paying attention to for like longer dated call options. I think that this is a great. I think personally. And I'll just tell you what I would do here. This is not financial advice by any means, but the way that I would be looking at this is I would be buying at the money call options. Probably, I would maybe would buy the $40 call options, 40 strike call options into like June. and I would just let these ride. I would buy more on dips. I would sell when it hits the top of the range, and I would just continue to do that wash, rinse, and repeat. I've been doing that a lot in the Qs. I've been doing that. I'm currently doing that in Google, and I've done it in SoFi. I've done it in a lot of stocks this year because it's such an easy strategy. When you start to think about somebody who wants to do swing trading, which is like you have a full-time job and you want to trade that is going to be like 6 to 12 weeks, you want to see actual alpha get generated, but you don't want to have to pay attention to it like every second. You don't want to be glued to your screen. This is the type of stock where I feel very comfortable because it has support behind it institutionally from not just the government, the shareholders, as well as like just generally like market chatter. You know what I mean? You go on FinTwit, you go on like Market Twits, you go on all these Reddits, Wall Street Bets. Everybody's gonna be talking about this and they're gonna be supporting it. So I like what I see here in Intel. I really like so, and this is if you watch the port where I was calling out the difference between forward and in terms of the way that this chart looks, you can see that on Friday this is like a gap up. Even though they say they were up 31 basis points, I see that this was a gap up. This opened at 40.02 and then it fell all the way down to 38.28. So even though we saw a nice move and we had some very good volume, that day was not as bullish as you'd really think. It is interesting when we look at the sentiment, we're at 63%. On the 15-day, we're at 61%. And again, I would suspect that this bullishness is going to stay there just because they're going to have a consistent bid because the federal government's not losing money. I mean, I don't know. I don't know much about how politics works in terms of like when they're making investments, just because I've generally lived in a free market policy country. Things have changed. But when we look at what's going on, I mean, volatility is falling, which I love. The reason why I love falling volatility is because low volatility bull markets are the way that you make a ton of money. They're the way that you can buy cheap options. They're the way that you can see sustained moves, and they're the easiest way to be able to trade, in my opinion. I prefer low volatility bull markets, and that's what I'm seeing here now inside of Intel. We're getting falling volatility. The correlation is slightly positive, slightly negative, and starting to fall. Love to see that. The real volatility is cratering essentially. Like the volatility jumped on the 17th when we saw that big massive move and it kind of had to work itself out and now it's falling and cratering essentially. So when we look at what we're seeing inside of Intel, to get to the data table, we are moderately high. We saw extremely high volume on Friday. This thing is incredibly bullish. We are actually pretty close to the trade level, which I love. I love that the trade level has caught up to where this price was because if we go back to the 17th of, if we go back to the 17th, essentially the day before the major announcement, you can see that the trade level was at 24.83 and the price is at 30.70 at 30.57 on massive volume. Love to see that. Now, when we start to look at where we're going to go from here, I would personally think that if we get a down day and we're even anywhere below 38, if we're in 37.70s, 37.60s, 37.50, right? If we get down to like that, because the trade level is going to continue to follow along with the close. The top of the trade level though, or the sell top, I'm going to need to be in the 40 soon. I need to get back up. It used to be in 41, used to be in 42, used to even be 43. I suspect that we'll get that again, but we're going to have to see an expressed move. I don't know what earnings are going to be like or when they are necessarily for Intel. Let's go ahead and just take a quick peek because I think, and I don't, again, I'm not a catalyst trader. I don't pay attention to this stuff, but okay, so it's coming up. Oh, so they just had it, which is like perfect. So they just added on Thursday. So I don't even have to worry about earnings and I don't really have to worry about any actual catalyst except for just like the federal government bragging about doing some sort of deal and making someone buy NVIDIA to them doing, I don't know, onshore manufacturing. When we look at where we are though, from the rolling returns, what I like is that we're only up 7.8% in the 1 month. I mean, the problem is we're up 93% in the 3 month. That'll kind of work itself out just with time. But I like that we're at 7.8% in the 1 month. I doubt that we're going to go negative. I like that we're only at 4% roughly in the past 3 weeks. I think this thing could easily be at like 41, 42 by the end of the week, if not by the end of the month at least. I'd say by Thanksgiving, I could easily see this thing be at like 45. And I'm not, and before you jump out and say that's a crazy move, that's a crazy move. That's like 20% in like a month. Yeah, in a market where you're seeing like nothing, no offense to any of the stocks that we're going to review, but when you're seeing just like trash get bid up, like when you're seeing something like what is it, Beyond Meat? Let's just go ahead and look at Beyond Meat real quick. So looking at Beyond Meat, when you have again, I don't look at fundamentals. I don't look at the catalyst. This thing popped up just because I like heard about it a little bit because I like pay attention to stuff. Is this what Beyond Meat is? Let me just look. Is this Beyond? Yeah, so this is BYND. So this is Beyond Meat. It apparently squeezed to like $8 or something. Yeah, so it squeezed to like $8 here, and or $6, or no, the high was 769. Of course it was. When you see moves like this, you can't suspect that anything is happening in the market except for a complete transition because this is a dog shit company. This is a dog shit stock. This is a stock that is beyond its period of time. So it's not even a pun, but like it's beyond its period of time. It shouldn't even matter. It's in the process of going bankrupt. So if I see that, there's no reason why I couldn't think that Intel, right? There's no reason why I wouldn't think that Intel could be up 20 or 30% in 6 weeks. There's literally no reason why not. Because if Beyond Meat is doing that, Intel can do that. And Intel's a real company that can definitely surprise the upside. Let's go ahead and look at one of the other meme stocks that we've been dealing with so far in 2025. Let's go ahead and look at Open. Open is, if you're trading this, I will pray for you. Like I'm not super religious, but I will pray for you. The reason why is because if we're looking at um, the way that Open has been trading this year, I mean, this thing was up 13.37% on Friday. That's insane to me, right? But if we think about where this chart is, and if you've watched any of my previous videos, this is kind of exactly what I expected. Now, my concerning thing, if we're looking, is obviously we saw this massive move in terms of what's been going on in Open. We saw like a very tight range. We saw a breakout. We saw an expansion of the range. We've seen a consolidation of the range where it started to fall. The thing that I like about this is that the top of the range is getting tight, the bottom of the range is getting tight. I don't like that it's angling down, but I do like the fact that this thing is starting to fight back a little bit. So it looks like the low here was 623. Fine. I'm absolutely fine with that. What was like the high here, something like that. I don't know where 620 why 623 is necessarily relevant as like a bottom, but I really appreciate that the move we're seeing today, where we're going back towards the top of the range, was on really good volume. You saw 207 million shares traded today. I mean, yes, the average is 272 million, but I think that's really more because of what we saw in July than it is anything. I like that we are fighting back from being negative on the sentiment as well. We're at 49.6 in the daily, so I suspect that this is going to continue to break up above the 15-day. Not really giving me a lot of support there. We're only at 46.8 in terms of the bullishness. Need to get above that 50% line. We start to look at this volatility breakout, as I would suspect. The volatility completely collapsed as the price didn't go anywhere for a few weeks. And now we're starting to get it kind of resuming higher. The correlation is higher as well. I could see with the volatility starting to break out and the correlation being positive, you could definitely get like a gap up. Now, when we look at what's been going on with the price, it's been moderately low. It's been at the bottom of the range. Today we saw it again, 13.37%, massive volume. We are very bearish, but we just broke up above the trade level, which I like to see. We have been below the trade level, it looks like, since essentially majority of October, right? We have been below the trade level. So this is a significant change in what we've seen. I think majority of the time when you're looking at stocks like Open, all you need is like a 6 week period. You need a 6 week period for the major move to get digested or a major move to continue on. That's just how I view the market. That's why I think that you can easily make good money in the market just looking at like 6 to 12 week options, as long as you're tactical in the position. Because let's just use this as an example, because let's say I had the worst timing, right? Let's say I had the worst timing and I bought here and I bought it like 969, right? I probably would have bought my options. I probably would have bought my options somewhere around $9. Let's just break even there because the close is 928. The top is at 969. Let's just say I bought one at $9. If I bought 6 week options, I'm still gonna have from here. So if I had bought it on the 9th, I would still have until essentially like the middle of November, to like November 15th, which from right now is still another 3 weeks away to get back there. Do I think that it has a chance to be able to get to like 950? Yeah, because that's the top of the range. As well as the type of move that I'm seeing right now, very high volume. It's not incredibly bullish, I'll admit that. But when you think about just giving yourself like time and space, too many people are trading these zero DTE options. That is a ridiculous way to trade. Now, I'm not saying that people can't make money on it, but you are probably not that person. No offense. I mean, I'm not that person. I definitely am not going to, first off, I'm not going to be glued to my screen, and I hope you are not. Secondly, I don't think that it's a traditional way that you want to be capturing like alpha, because you have to be too correct. Like, you have to actually be too correct. And even if I had bought this on, it looks like the 8th or so, right? I bought it on October 6th. I would have still had like a good enough amount of like theta to just like sell it. I could have sold it for 30% down, moved into something else, and been completely fine. Right? Like that's personally how I trade. I mean, if you watch these videos long enough, you're at 18 minutes, like that's how I personally trade. Let's go ahead and look at NVIDIA. I think NVIDIA, if you've watched my other videos, I've talked about NVIDIA quite a bit. The reason why I talk about it is because I had a position in it and I definitely like could have held it, but I sold it. Now, considering what I just said about like how I would have traded open, NVIDIA was something where like I had the time, it wasn't even a problem. Like my call options were like 185. It's 186 today. It was up 2.25%, but it's had like a weird move. It's showing weird bullishness and weird bearishness, right? Like I bought it like in here essentially in the middle of September, when it was like in the low or in like the high 170s. And like, yeah, I'll just buy the 185 calls. When it hit 195, I was like, okay, that's sweet. And now essentially we're seeing a really weird move inside of NVIDIA. The reason why is because we've gone from bullish to bearish back to bullish. We're getting a narrowing of the range while the price is coming down. The top of the range is at 193. I think this thing needs to close in the mid 190s. Like in November, it has to close in the mid 190s. If it doesn't, it just isn't worth spending time on. Right now, it looks like the top of the range, again, is in the 190s. The high was 187. The close at 186. I like that. I like the fact that we were positive on the full day. We look at the bullish sentiment. We've definitely risen back up above. We've been able to support above the 50% line. Looks like it's at 54.9. And then on the 3 week, you can see we're at 55.2. The volatility is falling, which I love to see. The correlation is negative. I think that's two negatives are going to make a positive there. If we're looking at the actual data table, you can see we've got the normal range, we've got the volume, we're above the trade level, which is great. Got a higher low. Again, I want to see the top of the range go higher. I like that we got a price to rise just based on how the volatility and correlation are working. We're positive on the 1 month and the 3 month. I just like what I'm seeing in NVIDIA. If I get a red day, I'll probably buy some more call options on it. I definitely sold some positions on Friday when we saw all of this green. I was like, I'm going to take some profits just because of the type of volatility that we've seen. So I'll be very curious to see what we see in NVIDIA going forward. But tell me what you think in the comments below. Are you long? Are you short? Do you like it? Do you love it? Is this even a good review? And before you go, subscribe. Check it out. I think I have like 300 videos and like 180 subscribers. Be 181. Be a trendsetter. Do your thing. I'll talk to you soon.